Hello everyone and welcome to Slash Film Daily for September 19th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news, and we'll also get Chris's reaction to The House with a Clock in Its Walls, and Ben saw some footage from The Girl in the Spider's Web. We'll have that in the feature presentation. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
How's it going, guys? I've been deep in my notes. I wrote down like 4,000 notes from a event months ago, and the embargo comes up tomorrow. You'll be able to read the results of it on the site. But turning 4,000 scribbled notes into a couple of pieces, months after I took the notes, it's always a lot of fun. Yeah. So we'll talk about that tomorrow on the podcast, I'm sure. But let's get to the news. Let's start with the news. Let's start with the big news that hit after we recorded the podcast yesterday, hit last night, and that is that the Disney streaming service will feature a couple Marvel TV shows, a Loki show and a Scarlet Witch TV series. Chris, what do we know?
So Disney streaming service, which is currently called Disney Play, as far as we know, they're going all in their goal to defeat Netflix, and the plan now is to develop several different Marvel Cinematic Universe TV shows that will focus on what they're calling second tier characters. Basically, characters who haven't had their own standalone movies are going to get their own TV shows, and they're starting off with both a Scarlet Witch show and a Loki show. And not only that, but both Elizabeth Olsen and Tom Hiddleston are both expected to, reprise their roles for these TV shows, which is, there was a time when this would be like unheard of, but I guess, the times are changing and Disney has enough money to make this happen.
Yeah, no, we've been theorizing about a Marvel TV show on this Disney streaming service since it was announced, but not in my wildest imaginations would we actually get a show with one of the, the main characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, I thought at most it would be like, a side character, kind of like, Coulson in, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or a world like Wakanda. But, I'm just wondering, like, I know Loki is beloved, but how many people are really itching for a Scarlet Witch movie?
Maybe it will cover the time period where we discover why and how her accent goes in and out so much.
I think that's doubtful. I don't know. I mean, maybe it could be more of a romance kind of thing, dealing with her and Vision. I mean, we don't know how things are going to pan out with Avengers 4. I should probably say, what I'm about to say, spoilers for the first few minutes of Avengers Infinity War. Although I don't know why you'd be listening to this podcast if you still haven't seen that film. How are they going to have Loki in this movie? Because I know even though we all imagine that Avengers 4 is going to restore order to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that everybody that kind of disintegrated would be restored, Loki was actually killed. And I believe the Russo brothers said that anybody that actually died in Avengers Infinity War are actually dead, which I think doesn't include, the people that have been dusted. What do you guys think? Do you could this be like an early, a prequel, or is this going to be the continuing adventures?
I think the Russo brothers are full of shit. So I don't buy for a second that everyone who died is really dead. So I really don't think that's going to be an issue. But if they are serious, it could always be a prequel. Or no, they're lying. No one is really dead.
I mean, I've said this before, I think, on this podcast. I'd love to see a movie or show about young Loki and like that kind of being brought up on Asgard as kind of like this second son kind of thing. I think that could be interesting. Obviously, this is not what that is, I don't think, unless they do it, kind of young Indiana Jones Chronicle style where they somehow, have segments with Tom Hiddleston and cut to, younger version of himself telling stories from before. Ben, what do you think?
Chris, you wrote this up. Was there any mention that this show, or these shows, I should say, are going to be live action, or could these be animated and those actors just returning for a voice role?
I mean, there's no indication. It doesn't specifically say these will definitely be live action. So, maybe they're animated, but from the sound of things, it sounds like they're live action. I mean, the story indicates that they're going to have like huge budgets, like feature film version budgets. And I feel like if they're doing that, it's just going to be live action. They wouldn't be spending that on animation.
Yeah. I mean, this is I'm sort of baffled right there with you, Peter. I assume this was going to be something with much, much smaller characters. So I guess I'm interested in a Loki show, although I just don't know. Like, I feel like Tom Hiddleston has said that he was done with that character. Disney must have just like backed up the truck and, unleashed a torrent of money on him for him to agree to do this. But because he's sort of played, we've seen Loki's shtick, for lack of a better term, so many times before. And unless he comes up with like, let's assume it's a prequel, unless he comes up with some totally new take on the character, I feel like it's just going to feel like Get Him to the Greek. You know how the Russell Brand's character in that movie was first introduced in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and he worked so well because he was like a smaller character, but once you give him his own story, it just sort of loses some of that magic. I wonder if something similar might happen.
Yeah, it's kind of like the On Stranger Tides, Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be following this. I'm sure there's going to be even more Marvel shows in development with the streaming service, and I'm sure as we near the launch of that, we will be hearing a lot more shows, not just Marvel, but Star Wars and beyond. But as Chris mentioned, he believes the Russo brothers are full of shit, and I think that's a good segue to talk about our next story, which is this photo that the Russo brothers have tweeted out. Ben, tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's Joe Russo, one of the co-directors, sitting in what appears to be a soundstage, and there's just a bunch of like mundane-looking filming equipment around him. The caption just says "Look hard" with an ellipsis after it. So it's like, what are they trying to do here? And people have zoomed in and tried to see if there's any sort of hidden details in this thing. The prevailing theories right now are that what they're actually doing is teasing the title of Avengers 4, which we have been speculating about for a long, long time. And the Russos have previously said that the title for that movie would be revealed after people had time to digest the events of Infinity War, because the title apparently spoils Infinity War. And Kevin Feige actually previously said in an interview that the title for Avengers 4 would be revealed after the teaser trailer for Captain Marvel came out, and that just was unveiled yesterday. So the Russo brothers are really like wasting zero time jumping on this thing and trying to get fans riled up. And of course it worked. Everybody's frantically speculating and trying to figure out what's going on.
I want to say I love this about the internet. I love when the internet becomes internet detective and they're like zooming into things and like enhancing and like drawing circles around, I just love all that kind of speculation, even if it probably doesn't mean anything.
I like it a lot when it's on, when it's stuff like this that has no consequence and no bearing on anything important in life. I like it less when, they try to like solve real crimes and stuff where, innocent people get caught up in the crossfire. But yes, when the geek lens of the internet turns and everyone joins forces to try to figure out a stupid mystery like this, it can be a lot of fun.
So, what are the prevailing theories of? I know you mentioned that the title of Avengers 4. Did we see anything there?
Yeah, so there's a ladder in the background, and it's faced in a way where it's open, and there's the sort of crossbar where it forms an A, sort of in a primary spot in the image. And there are actually a few other hidden A's throughout the image. I just saw that somebody noticed that there are a couple little X's in the background as well, so people are apparently assuming that this means that the X-Men might be involved, which is pretty ludicrous because this movie was made or or at least written well before the Disney Fox deal, which hasn't even technically gone through yet because they're still waiting on government regulations. So I don't think we're going to be seeing the X-Men. I'm pretty sure we can say that with confidence. But somebody did figure this out, and you'll have to look at the image because it's almost impossible for me to explain it properly in audio form, but we've linked to it in the article, and you can check that out in the show notes. But somebody drew out the word endgame throughout this image in sort of tracing letters across different shapes, where you could, if you look at this image in a certain way, understand that the word endgame is written across it in using the background stuff and like the way that the framing of a giant gate might form the letter N, that kind of thing. So that suggestion seems to be one of the big fan favorites, that this title might be Avengers Endgame. And of course,
it's so ludicrous. Like this theory is so ludicrous, but I think, as Chris said in our Slack channel, once you look at this image and then you look at the image without the letters pointed out, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I would, again, if you're even remotely interested in this, please go look at this image because it's pretty fascinating. The G in particular seems like it might be a little bit of a stretch, but the problem with this theory is that the Russos have specifically said that the title of Avengers 4 is not spoken dialogue in Infinity War, and Doctor Strange uses the phrase endgame in that movie. So, but as you pointed out in our Slack channel, Peter, technically, if you want to get really technical about it, the phrase Avengers Endgame is not actually spoken aloud in Infinity War. So maybe they can use that as a way to say, hey, we were telling the truth if this ends up panning out.
That, or as Chris theorizes, the Russo brothers are full of shit. So let's move on to Alamo Drafthouse. We've been talking about their initiative to bring VHS rental places to their new Alamo Drafthouses, and now they have announced that they are actually going to launch a VHS festival celebrating the glory days of VHS. Chris, tell us about it.
Yes, it's called VHStival, I guess is how you would pronounce it. And it's going to take place in October, over 2 days, October 20th and October 21st in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this is part of Alamo Drafthouse's new video store called Video Vortex, which they're opening in Raleigh. We reported on this before. They're going to have thousands and thousands of VHS titles, many of which have, never been transferred over to digital or DVD or Blu-ray, and you can rent them for free. I still don't really know how that really works out and how they're going to get, deal with people taking stuff for free, but that's the plan. And as part of that, they're doing this big festival where they're going to screen ultra rare films shot on video. There's a whole bunch of there's a whole list of events you can see at slashfilm.com. So if you're in the Raleigh area and you want to attend this, go for it. It's in October 20th and 21st. And if I were in this area, I'd probably go because I do have a sort of weird nostalgia for VHS, even though when you compare it to DVD and Blu-ray, it's like night and day. I mean, VHS looks terrible, but
it's even worse than I think most people remember it to be. Like, I feel like we remember it to be almost like a bad version of DVD, where it's much, much worse than that. I'm not sure I see the point of a VHS festival. Ben, is this something you would attend?
Like I've said before, I sort of am a fan of like having options as a consumer. So I think this is kind of a cool thing because, as we talked about in previous episodes, the idea that a ton of titles like this have not been converted to any other way, and the only way you can watch them is through VHSs. I mean, that's still like I appreciate the thought behind this. I'm not sure if I would go the extra mile to actually rent a VCR and the tapes to actually watch any of this stuff. But I love that the ability is out there and they're trying to do what they can to make it easy for people to do that if something ever came up. Like, I remember somebody posted a trailer for this really awful movie called Hard Ticket to Hawaii a few years ago. And I had never heard of this. And I watched the trailer and I was like, this looks terrible in the best way. I have to see this. And the only way I could watch it was through like a Netflix DVD rental, and obviously I still have that and subscribe to that plan. But it's one of those things where I feel like if somehow somebody unearths some amazing looking movie that's not available any other way, but it's there on VHS, I would love the ability to go into a store and check it out. So I guess this is a net good overall.
Yeah, but we're not just talking about a store, we're talking about a festival. But I guess what you're trying to say, Ben, is the future of cinema is watching VHS on a big, huge IMAX screen, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I just said.
And that future of cinema also involves sequels to 1990s films like Space Jam. We've just learned that Space Jam 2 is actually happening, and it's going to be produced by Black Panther director Ryan Coogler. Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, Hollywood Reporter just broke this news that Ryan Coogler is going to come on board to produce Space Jam 2, which is going to be the first starring role for basketball player LeBron James, who has acted in a couple movies here and there. He was really good in Trainwreck, the Amy Schumer film a couple years ago, in a really funny supporting role as himself. But he is really trying to make a splash in the entertainment world. I think he's been producing some stuff, some like reality TV shows here and there. But he has been trying to get a Space Jam sequel off the ground for years. And I think Justin Lin, the director of a lot of the Fast and Furious movies and Star Trek Beyond, was attached a while back to direct this, but now Terrence Nance is going to be directing, and LeBron James is starring, and Ryan Coogler is going to be on board as a producer. So, and of course, Bugs Bunny is also co-starring because for those who don't know, Space Jam, the first one starred Michael Jordan, and it basically was like him teaming up with the Looney Tunes to play basketball against an invading alien race who wanted to enslave Michael Jordan and all of humanity. But
it looks like the alien race is coming back to Earth.
I think so. I don't know if they were vanquished once and for all, or if maybe if like Danny DeVito, I think he voiced the lead alien, the coach of the alien squad. I don't know if he's going to come back, or if if maybe Jordan himself is going to come back. We're still not sure, details about the actual plot of this movie, but I assume it's just going to be sort of a redux of the original one.
Like, I understand nostalgia, and I just don't understand why people have nostalgia for bad things like VHS and Space Jam.
I mean, I am like right on the cusp of being the age where I saw this movie and enjoyed it a lot then, but I think, and there are a ton of people in my generation who this movie, they think that the first Space Jam is legitimately great, and it's conflating viewing something as through a nostalgic childhood lens with actually approaching it critically, because I went back and watched it a few years ago, and it's like almost unwatchable. It's so terrible. But I loved it when I was 9 or whatever. So, and I feel like people can't necessarily separate those two things. So maybe that's part of it. But I don't know. I guess there's a lot of opportunity here. There's potential to turn this into a movie that's actually good, but it's going to be tough. I'll say that.
But Ben, you're also someone that has a love for the movie Hook.
I am, yeah. Oh, for sure, yeah. And,
which I think falls into this category, I think.
Well, I mean, maybe a little bit, but I have rewatched that, and I'll actually still go to bat for elements of that movie, on their own accord, outside of just my rose-colored nostalgia glasses.
No, I'm the same way. I like Hook, and I love Goonies, and nobody is going to tell me that that's a bad movie. I'm sorry. Let's move on to another reboot, and that is Child's Play is getting rebooted and is landing Aubrey Plaza. Chris, tell us about it.
Yes, so I was trying my damnedest to not care about this Child's Play remake because I hate the idea that it's happening, because I love the original Child's Play franchise, and the original franchise is still going with its original creators, but MGM basically went behind their back to make their own remake here, and the remake is going to have almost nothing to do with the original. It's going to be about like a robot doll instead of like a doll possessed by a serial killer, and it's supposed to be like it's been compared to Stranger Things, and it's going to be about like a group of kids fighting the doll. So all this sounds terrible, and I was prepared to not care at all and pretty much never see this film. But now, word has it that Aubrey Plaza and Brian Tyree Henry are both going to be in the film, and now, gosh darn it, I can't ignore it because they're two very good actors, and the fact that they're going to be involved with this film has me curious about it. Aubrey Plaza is apparently playing the mother character of one of the kids, and Brian Tyree Henry is apparently playing a cop, maybe modeled on Chris Sarandon's character, who was a cop in the first film. So I don't know what to make of this. Again, I think this is a stupid idea and it shouldn't be happening, but these two actors are worth paying attention to. So now I really don't know what to think.
Yeah, but I feel like this is a waste of these two actors' talents in a movie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, if they're going to do it, I guess I'll see it. But, yeah, I'd rather they just go star in a different movie together, not this.
Yeah, I like the original Child's Play. I didn't really love any of the sequels. I haven't revisited them since they came out. But I guess Aubrey Plaza is enough to get me interested in this reboot. Ben, are you interested at all in this series?
So, yeah, I think the first one was okay, and I guess I'm right there with Chris. If they see something in the script that they think is worthwhile, Brian Tyree Henry is really great on Atlanta. So, I guess I'm on board here.
Yeah. Let's move into our feature presentation. We got a couple of them today. Let's start off with the House with a Clock in Its Walls. Chris, you saw this movie. I'm actually very curious because this looks like it could be fun. They held the junket at the Magic Castle, which I did not attend. But how is this? How is Eli Roth's family-friendly Fright Fest?
It's okay. I really wanted to like this. I thought the trailers looked great, and I feel like if I had seen this movie as a kid, and this is by and large a film aimed at younger audiences, and if I had seen this as a kid, I would have loved it because it has it pushes all my buttons. It has it's got this creepy vibe. It's got a Halloween vibe to it. It's just got scary supernatural stuff going on, and like I said, if I had seen this at a young age, I would just it would be like, oh, this is my favorite movie ever made. But now that I'm an adult, it doesn't work as well. I could easily see this becoming something like Hocus Pocus, where even though that movie isn't that great, it has this huge following just because it has a really good atmosphere. And I could see like people who see this movie now at a young age, like 20 years from now, they'll be acting like this is a classic, much like people act like Hocus Pocus is today. It's got stuff I like. Jack Black and Cate Blanchett are both very good in it. The main kid is not great, and I don't like to criticize child actors too much because acting is hard, and some kids just don't have it. There are some kids, some child actors who are they have the gift, they can really turn in a great performance, and a lot, however, cannot. And this kid falls in the latter category, where almost everything he says made me like cringe, just the way he delivers it. He delivers it in a very cringy, unnatural way. So that really bothered me, especially because he's the star of the film, so he's in like every scene. So like I said, I wanted to like this. It has stuff that you're going to enjoy, but overall it's kind of forgettable, unfortunately.
Oh, that's sad. One of the reasons I do want to see this in theaters is in IMAX 3D, they are having Thriller in 3D. Did you get to see that before this film or no?
No, I saw it at a regular 2D screening, so they didn't show the Thriller intro.
Oh, boo. Okay.
I also saw this movie last night. I just want to echo every single thing that Chris just said there. I feel exactly the same way about this movie.
Oh, disappointing. Because I was planning on going to see this just for Thriller in 3D, and both of you have made me not want to see this movie.
I think the only redeemable thing about it is the relationship between Jack Black and Cate Blanchett's characters, and it really made me just want a whole movie of just them, and they're in the movie a decent amount, so that's good. But we're talking about The Predator going off the rails in its last act. This movie is a very similar thing, where it just like it goes to crazy town by the end of it, and it's weird because like Eli Roth you can tell that there are moments where he's really trying to sneak in some, pushing the boundaries kind of moments into this movie, like little flashes that will traumatize kids and stay with them for years afterwards. But it sort of doesn't fit with the rest of the tone of the PG movie that's all around it. So I don't know. It's a strange film.
That's disappointing. Okay, let's move on to our last and final story in our feature presentation, and that is The Girl in the Spider's Web. This is the sequel to The Girl in the Dragon Tattoo. Ben, you got to see some footage from this and talk to the people involved yesterday, actually, right?
Yes, yeah. So yesterday I went to the Sony lot in Culver City here, and they showed director Fede Alvarez, who directed Don't Breathe a couple of years ago, and actress Claire Foy, who just won an Emmy earlier this week for her work on The Crown. They were there to do a little Q&A, and they actually showed us the first 20 minutes of the movie. I was not expecting them to show that much of it. But really, if you watch all 4 trailers that have been released for this film, I think there are 2 domestic and 2 international trailers at this point, you kind of will get a really good sense of the stuff that we saw, because we basically just saw some extended scenes from those trailers. So the footage, I wrote up a full sort of recap and reaction that you can read on the site, so I'm not going to go beat by beat through exactly what we saw, but just overall thoughts on it. It has this really icy look that reminds me a lot of the modern James Bond movies. And actually watching this footage and seeing the trailers beforehand, it sort of reminded me a lot of Spectre, which is the most recent Daniel Craig Bond movie. And because Claire Foy plays Lisbeth Salander, who is a hacker who's living in Stockholm, Sweden, and she basically gets roped into fixing a problem from Stephen Merchant, who plays an NSA agent who has created what he calls the Sum of All of My Sins, which is a program that basically allows people to access nuclear weapons remotely, like from their desktop or laptop computers. And so she has to sort of track down what's going on, and we learn in the trailers that her sister is around, and she is actually the one who's orchestrating all of Lisbeth's problems, which is very much like what happened with Christoph Waltz's Blofeld and Daniel Craig's Bond in Spectre. And just the look of the movie reminds me a lot of Bond. There's some action scenes where it looks like straight out of a 007 movie, and even there's a debriefing scene where she gets debriefed by Stephen Merchant's character, and they're both sitting on a bench in a museum, which is exactly what happens in some of the most recent Bond movies. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of potential here, but I'm sort of positive to mixed on the footage that we saw. Lakeith Stanfield plays an NSA agent, and there's a really interesting long continuous shot of him in his office in Washington, D.C. That sort of shows a little bit of Fede Alvarez's style in this world. But I sort of a weird positive to mixed vibe on the first few minutes of this film.
I'm not sure this is going to be enough to get me excited for this one either. Chris, do you have any interest in The Girl in the Spider's Web?
This sounds very strange. I loved the Fincher one. I know not everyone loves it, but I thought it was great, and I wanted more of his version of it. So just the fact that he's not making it and it's a whole new cast really was already turning me off. And I just find it really weird that they're turning it into based on the trailers and based on what Ben just said, they're turning it into an action movie, and that's not at all what the Fincher one is. The Fincher one has action in it, but it's really a mystery thriller, and this just sounds like a straight up spy movie, which just sounds very strange to me. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's weird. They said in the Q&A that all of the previous movies focused on the journalist, which I think his name is Michael Blomkvist in the films. But this is the first movie of the Dragon Tattoo series that is going to 100% tell the story of Lisbeth instead of having her being a supporting character sort of floating around the edges of the story. So Yeah, it seems like a slightly different take on it from what we've seen before, but yeah, there was a lot of action in the first few minutes, and like the opening scene is really great, and that's the same opening scene that opens the most recent trailer. So if you want to see that, you can basically see that scene in full play out in the beginning of that trailer, because it sort of opens with the first few minutes of that, where she's like this avenging angel getting revenge on this evil guy who's abused his wife, and they talked in the Q&A about how the protagonist, about how Claire Foy feels about playing a protagonist like that right in the midst of this Me Too movement. So you can check out a video. I recorded the entire Q&A, so you can watch the whole thing if you're interested in the film at slashfilm.com.
Yeah, and you can also read Chris's review of The House with the Clock in Its Walls, which is just a mouthful of a title. Both of these are a mouthful of a title.
Yeah.
On slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. Ben, where can people find more of your work online?
You can find me at slashfilm.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Ben Pearson.
Chris, where can we find you?
I'm also at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at Evangelista413.
You can find me at slashfilm.com. You can find all the stories we talked about today on slashfilm.com. You can find me on social media at slashfilm on any of the social media sites. And this podcast, Slash Film Daily, is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to Peter at slashfilm.com. Leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention the email on the air. And also, please go give us a good review on iTunes. Tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you tomorrow.